I think the lifestyle kind of chose me. It's been in me since I was a little girl. And honestly, it's funny because I don't get to talk about horses a lot, like we were saying earlier, but it's really the reason I'm here. They are the impetus for this whole journey for me. I don't know if I would have the same path if it hadn't been for the horses leading me. They've always been like, that interest has led me one step.
Over the past 10 years, Jill has helped thousands of families learn how to grow their own food, ditch the grocery store, and live an old-fashioned on-purpose lifestyle. I got that right from your website.
Yes.
And I love that description. I love how it describes how so many people want to be in that place. They want to grow their own food. They want to find, they want to live the way their grandparents lived, at least somewhat. And that old-fashioned on purpose, I love that. I've always loved that you titled your website that way and your stuff that way, because it just sounds, there's a lot to that. There's a lot of meaning to that, to be old-fashioned on purpose. And I want to welcome my guest, Jill Winger, to the podcast. I am thrilled that you are here, and I'm so excited about this topic because we both are very passionate about this topic, but we don't get to talk about it a whole lot. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Mona. I am so excited to be here today.
Thank you. Okay, so oftentimes in my interviews, just about every interview I've had, I start with how we met, but we only just really met. But, however, you probably don't remember me, but we used to be in the same blogosphere.
Oh, is it the blogosphere I'm thinking of?
I don't know. I mean, we used to be in the same realm of blogging back in 2010. People don't usually use that term anymore. So
yeah, but it was the thing.
It was. It was. And so we sort of knew each other. I had a blog called Healthy Homesteading.
Oh, okay.
And I remember you because you had amazing things you were sharing back then, like you are now. But you also were a homesteader with horses. So that was the main reason I think I followed you, because of that. And I think also Prairie Homestead and Healthy Homesteading got started about the same time, because I think you were like 6 months ahead of me or something.
Yeah, because I didn't realize you were like the OG. That's so fun.
Yeah,
because there's not a lot of us still doing it from that era.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't. I stopped my blog, actually. I don't know. It was several years ago. I did the worst SEO thing thing you could possibly do, and I deleted my blog. I kept the name. I kept healthyhomesteading.com, but I deleted the blog.
Yeah.
And so I restarted it. So that is what my website is called now. It's Healthy Homesteading. But I had to restart the whole thing. But I did print it.
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I have my printed.
You have the printed blog. No, I don't have a printed blog. I'm jealous.
Well, yours would be like huge at this point.
A lot of paper. Yeah, a lot of paper. And some of those old posts, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if those should be memorialized. They're pretty rough.
Yeah, mine are definitely rough. And some of them are just like, I was ahead of the times. And some of mine are just pictures with like 5 words.
You're
so it was
artistic.
like before. Yeah, it was
yeah.
before Instagram and all that. I was doing. Yeah. Funny thing about this though, I didn't realize it till years later after I printed it. It was a PDF on my computer. My blog got hacked.
Oh no.
And the very first blog post is a blogger returns thanks to Oxycontin.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
So it got hacked. But it's not the whole blog. But anyway, it was probably good that I stopped it, because it would have been taken over.
Yeah. The hackers are formidable. Yes.
Okay. What I noticed about you back then, though, is you had great blogging and marketing skills. And then I think I listened to a podcast episode where you talked about how you were blogging since you were like a teenager. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes so much sense.
Yes. Yeah. I think I started my first one. It was actually a horse blog, like a nerdy
Oh,
teenage girl horse blog
oh,
back when
how
I was
fun.
like 15, and no one knew what a blog was. And so when people would be like, "What are you doing on the computer so much, Jill?" And I'm like, well, it's like a website, but it's like a
Uh-huh.
journal, and I like write on it because I'm like, no one knows what a blog is. So I did that, and I deleted it when I got to college because I'm like, this is lame. And then
Hmm.
little did I know, I would start it back up. And
Yeah.
not the horse blog, but I would use those skills. I actually still use the coding I learned as a teenager, the good old HTML. I still use
Uh-huh.
some of those today. So
Yeah.
weird, full circle.
Yeah, that is amazing. And you're such an inspiration with that because, had I stayed with it, it would have been different, but, life stuff happened.
And sometimes, yeah, sometimes fresh starts are good too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, and the HTML, like I know a little bit of coding just because, WordPress was pretty
Yes.
it was pretty hard
Yep.
back then.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So today we are going to talk about having horses on the homestead. We both talked about this before we recorded, but we don't get to talk about this topic very often because it's not a beginner topic. Um, it's not a beginner topic. It's not really as much accepted in the homesteading space because the horses don't really give you much back in
Yeah.
way of like food
Yep.
or
Exactly.
yeah, they give you back a lot, and that's what we're going to talk about. But it's not necessarily with like keep you more self sufficient or anything like that.
Right.
But I know there are people on this listening to my podcast that are interested. Either they have horses and they want to know how to start homesteading with their horses, or they really know they want horses in the future and they want to know how to do it correctly and that sort of thing. Um, so Jill and I hopefully are going to help you understand what homesteading is like with horses and what you really need to know, and that you need to be very thoughtful about deciding to add them to your homestead or your homestead plans. And I was thinking we should probably break down some language. So I'll be asking you some questions and hopefully, so we're not sounding like very horsey, nerdy,
Yes. Yes.
And then we'd be like, what are you talking about?
Like,
What's a
what are they
discipline?
saying?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we'll hopefully break down. And if I say a term and you want to break it down and say, maybe people don't understand what that is. So before we start talking about horses, I would love to hear some of your story. I know a little bit of it. Um, like, how did you actually get started homesteading, and why did you choose the lifestyle?
Yeah. So I think the lifestyle kind of chose me. It's been in me since I was a little girl. And honestly, it's funny because I don't get to talk about horses a lot, like we were saying earlier, but it's really the reason I'm here. They are the impetus for this whole journey for me. I don't know if I would have the same path if it hadn't been for the horses leading me. They've always been like, that interest has led me one step ahead of where I'm at. So I've been interested in horses in a rural lifestyle since I was about 3 years old. I wasn't raised in this lifestyle. I was raised in a little neighborhood in the town. So I was very conventionally brought up, but I've always just had that spark that I wanted to live on a farm or a ranch, and I wanted to have animals. And so when I turned 18, I chased that dream to Wyoming, about 1,200 miles away from my hometown. And I was going to have a career in the horse industry. And that was my big goal. And fast forward a couple of years, I met my husband. We got married, and I had my couple of personal horses. And I was like, well, we need a place to put them. And I just really had always been obsessed with that idea of having them out my front door. And I wanted to have, the land and the house and the horses in the barn. That was like the thing. And so we bought our first property, not with the intention to homestead, but with the intention to have horse property. And we could afford not a whole lot at that point. So we bought a very tumble down fixer-upper horse property, which I think I walked through the house one time when we looked at it, and I was like, where's the bedroom? Where's the kitchen? Okay, good enough. And then I went back outside and looked at the barn again because I really just only cared about the barn and the fences and the pasture. And so once we got settled into that property, one of our first problems was the horse manure because we were too poor to have a tractor. I knew the horse manure needed to do something because it was just piling up every time I'd muck the pins. And so I'm like going, what are we going to do with all this horse manure? And lo and behold, the idea of a compost pile came into my understanding. And so we started to look at that, and I started, just kind of hit with this spark of like, what if this land could be productive? And so that's kind of that question that started that whole homestead snowball. And here we are today. Like it's become a lifestyle. And sometimes it's honestly even taken priority over the horses, but the horses have always been in the background. And now as our homestead's a little more established and my businesses are a little more established, the horses are now kind of coming back up and taking center stage. So it's kind of a cool little dance over the years.
I love that because you pretty much described my journey as well.
That's awesome.
It was always the horses first.
Yep.
And the homesteading actually came after. It was, for me, it was more like I saw some health issues with myself and my kids, and then I started doing, going towards that. But it was, like you said, when we were searching for property, okay, like how does this look for my horses?
Yeah.
And so that's great. Like no wonder why I loved you way back when you were. It's like we're
kindred spirits. I'm pretty sure. Yep.
Yes. So we'll have to plan a ride sometime.
Yes.
I'm in Georgia, so we started off in California.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'd have to trailer a little ways to get together, but we can do it. It could happen.
Yeah. We started our journey in California on 2.5 acres, and it was for the purpose of having it for our horses.
Yes.
And then, one thing led to another, and then we ended up with a full-on homestead with dairy goats and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely the horses have been a driving part of just like the lifestyle itself, getting into. Yeah. So now that you've been homesteading for a long time, like with or without the horses, like this question can be answered with or without bringing up horses, but like, what do you feel like is the best part of the journey? What do you feel like the best part was? Like, if you look back on your life, like what are the best parts of your journey, of your homesteading journey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, homesteading, and I think for a lot of people actually, it's basically been one big personal development path. Some people go to conferences or read books, and I do those things too. But like for me, getting out there and living a lifestyle and learning new things and putting myself in situations where I don't know the answer, but I have to figure it out, or I have to look to nature for answers. That's, I think, been the best part, one of the best parts for me in terms of it just has grown me as a person. It's stretched me. It's kind of brought me into my potential. And so I think if I had to just distill it all down, that would be one of my favorite pieces. I think my other favorite piece would be watching our kids be raised in this and just seeing how, it's not parenting for me, but man, it sure helps. Like it just, the homestead teaches a lot of lessons that I don't have to teach, and like nature does it for me, or the animals do it for me. And it's just really beautiful to watch them have those experiences as I'm having my own experiences. So I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Yeah, same. My youngest, she's 18 now, but she was born on the homestead, and that she's only known that life. And she was just, the animals were, because she was so far away from the other kids. She was 9 years and 12 years. The animals in the homestead was they were her playmates. The goats were her playmates. The horses were her teachers, and there's so much they learn. And if that's the only reason why you're homesteading, I think that, if anybody's listening, that's a good enough. Yeah.
That's good enough. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So how many children do you have, by the way?
I have 3. My oldest is 13 and my youngest is 7.
Okay. So. Okay. Yeah. Mine are 30 to 18.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So you're the step ahead. Yeah. The next phase. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and you're coming up to a very, very nice time. It'll all come full circle probably at some point, like it has for me. My oldest, she was about 10 when we started our homestead in California. And so she kind of got in there late. And I didn't know, like when I was fully into it, when I was fully like homesteading and doing all the things, she was about 15, 16, and then she moved out. So she didn't really get to see me do a lot of things. But now she has 3 kids, almost 4 of her own. And she loves to watch that, and she wants that for herself. So it really became full circle. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. And it's coming up for you, I'm sure.
Yes. I love that. I mean, I loved the little kid years, although there was, it's a lot more work, but watching them just even now, little glimpses of the people that they will become, it's just like, wow, this is really fun. This is
Yeah.
a blast. Yeah.
Yeah. Your words start coming, I mean, you're negatively, that could be seen as a negative too, but your words start coming back to you. The things that you started saying
Yes.
when they were kids and you think they weren't listening, they're listening. And
Yes.
they start coming
Yes,
back.
they are. Yep. Yep. Good and bad, it comes back.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yep.
Okay. So let's get into the topic of horses. So you said you started, so how many horses did you have when you actually got on started your homestead?
I think we had two at that. No, we had three at that point.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was in Wyoming, and you had acreage, I'm assuming? Like, lots of acreage?
Yeah, so we bought 67 acres with that fixer
Mhm,
upper.
mhm,
And so, yeah, the barns, I've never done the traditional stalling like people might think of in a stable with each horse having a 12 by 12 box stall. So we're always
mhm.
pretty pasture centered and just having corrals. But
Yeah.
yes, that's kind of been our setup ever since.
Yeah, I love that you had 67 acres. That's amazing, and that's, like, my dream as well. It's, like, to have lots of acres for my horses. I've never had
Yes.
lots of acres. We've always had,
Yes.
smaller spaces.
Although I bet in your places you've lived, you need less acreage. Like here, we have to have more per animal because our grass is so sparse. But like
Mhm.
when I go back east, I'm always like, oh my gosh, there's so much grass packed in square
Yeah.
footage. Like you get a lot more bang for your buck.
Yeah, this is true, except we didn't get a property that I was hoping for. I mean, I call this our farm Thankful Hill Farm because I'm determined to be thankful about it,
Yes.
even though it
Yep.
didn't turn out exactly, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's mostly woods, so we have about 5 acres,
Mm,
and it's, mostly woods, and we have 4 horses here, and there's not very much, so we have to feed hay. So, we'll
yep.
we'll get into that as well because
Yes.
the reality for a lot of people is that you have to feed hay, and then it gets very, very expensive.
Yes. It does. It
S
does.
so you've always been a horse lover, right?
I
Did
have.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is there anybody in your family that has passed that down to you?
Not really. My dad always liked the cowboy lifestyle and he rode saddle bronc when he was a young guy, not when I was around. So I think he passed the love of the Western culture to me.
Mhm.
But we didn't have horses growing up. Actually, I begged and begged and begged. And finally, when I was 14, I had babysat enough and saved up enough money that I got my first horse at
Mhm.
14. We had to board it down the road because we lived in a neighborhood. But I was kind of the pioneer in my immediate family, although later on I learned that my great grandmother was a horsewoman. And
Mhm.
I found a picture of her on a horse, and it sounded like she was very passionate about it. So I think I just got those genetics. I just skipped a few generations.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like there is always there's somebody that was like a horse lover. For me, it was my grandfather, and actually my mother loved horses too, but my grandfather was like he did trick riding and that sort of
Oh,
thing.
way
We
cool.
have
That's
Yeah, he
awesome.
has photos of him standing on horses and doing crazy things.
Yeah.
Um, but it really, like, none of my siblings, it was just me, like,
Yep. Yep.
so there is a such thing, I feel like there is such thing as a horse gene.
I think there is. And that's what the people like, sometimes when I'm like, we were talking in homesteading circles or events are like, oh, it's just like not feasible. It's not practical. Like, I don't know, just don't do the horses. And I'm like, but you can't not do them. If you have it in you, you just
Yeah.
you have to do it. So you might as well figure out a way to make it work because you just got to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, for those people who talk about, I mean, we need to be smart about our decision making, but,
Yes.
like, if it's that much of a negative reasons to add horses, then it's probably not for you. If there's
Right.
enough positive inside of you that says, "I think I need this,"
Yeah.
then, pursue it and see what happens, but yeah. Um Okay, you talked about Western, so now we're gonna talk about, this is where we're gonna explain the
Yes.
disciplines. So
Yes.
Western writing, there's basically 2 disciplines, there's Western and English. So you mostly did Western, within the disciplines, there's more disciplines.
It's a lot of disciplines.
Yeah.
Yes. And
So
within, yep.
what within Western, you wrote Western, or did you do any English or anything like that?
I did a little bit of English in college. So I went to a community college with a horse program, and I actually had a scholarship for their horse show team. And
Mm,
so I kind of by default had to ride hunt seat for a few shows, which I actually really enjoyed. I wasn't very good at it. I didn't practice it much, but it was fun to do that. But other than that, it's mostly been Western. And I started off as a kid because our area wasn't super horsey. So it was a lot of trail riding and just kind of 4-H stuff. And then as I got older, I like cow horse things. And so I worked for some cutters. I worked for some ring cow horse guys. And more recently, I've showed ranch horse versatility, which is kind of a combination of, for those who are completely uninitiated, like you work a cow and then you do a pattern to kind of show how well your horse steers and handles. And then you do a course over logs and bridges to show that your horse is versatile. And so I kind of like dabbling in all those little pieces. I think it's fun to have a horse that can do all this stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do your horses do farm ranch work? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, we also run cattle. We have a commercial beef business, and so it's important to me that the horse not just be an arena horse, and I want them to be able to go outside. And like my one show horse, he's 6. I had a friend rope off of him. I'm not a very good roper, so I had my friend do it. But yeah, he's been roped off of. He's been outside to gather and can drag calves and go over cricks. And so yeah, I'd like having them be able to do all the things in the real world too.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest difference between your experience and mine is that my horses did nothing for the homestead. Like, I mean, nothing for the farm other than maybe the manure. I used it a couple times. I don't really usually use it as much because it's a hot manure.
Yes.
And it takes a lot to break it down. But yeah, my horses have done other than for myself and for teaching perseverance and patience and all those things. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah.
And I do, like, if we didn't have our cattle down the road, it would be a lot. I mean, I wouldn't have as many jobs to do on the horse. I think one thing I do, like I did yesterday, I brought in our milk cow because she's in the lower pasture and I could walk down there if I wanted, but I'm too lazy. So I'll just get on the horse and ride down there and push her up, which is about as slow and as unexciting as you can possibly imagine. But, then I'm like, oh, look, I'm using my horse to bring in the cow for the homestead. Yeah. So, but yeah, most of it, if I didn't have the commercial cattle, it would be not a lot of practical use. Although I always think about like Wendell Berry. I don't know if you've read any of his books. He's a horseman, but he uses them for plowing and he likes the draft horses. So I'm like, oh, there's a connection there. It could work.
Yeah. I always thought about that. I don't have a big enough garden for that, or I've never had a big enough garden for that. But my one of my horses is the one I've had. I call her my heart horse. I've had her for 20 years. I've had her for 20 years, and she's 33 now.
Oh my goodness.
But she was a harness race horse. So I was like, well, she knows how to pull.
Yes.
Of course, it would probably turn out terrible, and she would just pull me across.
It's garden harness racing. I mean, it's almost the same thing.
Yeah. But okay.
Do you do English or Western? What's been your primary?
Mostly English. I started out when I was 13, and I took lessons. I didn't grow up on a farm either or anything like that, and I took lessons. My mom, who was the one that loved horses as well, made sure that I got into riding lessons. But I did do some Western. And I have a Western saddle. Like I've used Western, but I did do mounted drill team for a season.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that was actually really, really fun. And you have to you have to watch the other horses, and we did all those crazy patterns and stuff like that. So, but it was funny because, so if people are listening, the main difference between Western and English riding is the saddle. The bridle is a little different, but the bits are sometimes different. But what the way a Western a lot of times will ride is neck reining, which means that when you turn your horse a certain way, they recognize the pressure on the neck. So they turn like that. With English, am I making any sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. Of course, I know what you're saying too.
With English, it's direct reining. So you're holding both hands on the reins, and you're pulling each rein independently. So when I was doing the mounted drill team, I went from riding English, where I'm direct reining, to riding Western, where I'm neck reining, and that was my biggest problem. I had really hard time only using one hand, but I did really well, and the horse, figured out what I was doing, and we
Yeah.
did well with it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That can be more of a transition than people think. I actually ride most of my horses in a snaffle, and I direct rein even some of the older ones because I just feel like it's
Hmm.
gentler for a lot of them.
Hmm.
But yeah, when you try to switch back and forth, or people don't understand, well, I'm just going to ride him in a different bit. And I'm just going to start neck reining. I'm like, no, you have to like prepare him for that. They just don't,
Yeah.
it's just like not instant, but it can be
Right.
hard for the horse and the human. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fun. I think it's important to, have experiences in different disciplines and that sort of thing. My daughter, my youngest, the one that I was talking about earlier, she was really heavy into mounted games.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with that one?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, she did, they do the balloon, they pop a balloon going full speed
Yep.
and the sort of like, so she did that. And that's just that's a fun sport. If any of your kids want to get into a fun sport, but that is in an English saddle. It's kind of like Gymkhana in an English saddle, only they do a lot
Yes.
different games. But
Yes. Yeah. A lot of
yeah,
lot of adrenaline. Yep. That's
yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Okay. So I knew this was going to happen. We're going to start talking about horses, and then, like it's
We're
really hard
talking
to stop.
shop now. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
shop now. So one of the things that I get when people ask me if I have horses, they kind of like, it's always like, do you ride them? And I have two retired horses. So I don't ride those horses. And that's something that, as far as when people don't realize, is that horses don't, their end doesn't always end up in a good place. So
Mhm.
they, it's not like you send them off to be butchered, unless that's
Right.
what, you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
Um, so you really have to think about whether you want them for long term or not. And like I said, I have had one for 20 years, and now she's retired, and she's basically, I don't ride her. Um, do you have any horses like that? Any of your horses, are they at the point where they're retired and they're just on maintenance right now?
I don't right now. I did have my very first horse, the one that I bought when I was 14. I ended up bringing, and he was old when I got him. So he was like 16 when I bought him. And so he made the trek to Wyoming after we got married, and he got to spend his last years here on the property, which was kind of a cool full circle moment because I was the little girl buying him with dreams of having him in my front yard. And he got to be that for a couple years.
Mm.
But yeah, right now I had two mares that I had hoped would be my, I would keep them till they were ready to die on natural
Mhm.
terms, and they both ended up having things that caused us to put them down young, which was
Mm.
not what I wanted. But yeah, I don't have any at the moment, but I'm prepared to do that with the ones that are meant to be with me. They'll be here till their last day for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I mean, and people have to make their own decisions at the time that it comes, and sometimes it works out that the next owner is willing to take on an older horse and that sort of thing. But all I could think of when we moved from from California to Georgia, was the fate of my mare that I had
Yeah.
for so long. Because she wasn't, she's the horse that you tie the red ribbon on her tail because she'll kick. She didn't have any special abilities. She was a good trail
Yeah.
horse, but she was coming down to the end of her years. And I'm like, I can't see her, I can't let her go on a meat truck. And that's all I could think of, was that
Yes.
she ended up
Yes.
on a meat truck, because at auctions, that's a lot of times
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, people are well intending and they give them away and that sort of thing. And I know, they're expensive. So I know there's struggles, but you do have to think about the end life of a horse when you own one.
Yes.
So, and
Yeah.
yeah. Let's talk about, let's talk to the person who's experienced with horses and has them and knows for sure they want them on the homestead. Um, let's speak about the benefits, because, so far we just kind of, I mean, we didn't really give exactly what the benefits are of having horses if you can't use them for consumption or for the farm.
Yeah.
So what would you say are the benefits of owning horses that are outside of those things?
So this is a revelation maybe I've had in the last couple of years that I kind of came to after really starting to understand the soil and my gardens and my place on the homestead in a different way. And I started to realize that the pursuit of horsemanship, because there's different ways to do horses. There's very much, if we look at, I go back to Wendell Berry, he talks about the idea of exploiting the earth versus partnering with the earth in terms of our garden and our ag, but it also works with horses. And there's very much a mindset from good meaning people who come to horses with more of an exploitive mindset, like I'm going to dominate you and you're going to do what I say and I'm going to use you up and I'm going to use you for my purposes. And they're not evil people. It's just that's kind of a mindset that's perpetuated in the horse industry. But then for me, I'm trying to pursue horsemanship, which is more like, let's partner. I'm going to figure out your psychology and we're going to work together and we're going to have a more beautiful relationship in the end that we're mutual, that we're both getting something out of it. And so as I've started to understand more on the soil side of things, I'm starting to see my path with horses is really mirroring that. And I think there's nothing like that pursuit of horsemanship, which is a lifelong obsession. It has to be, because it's not easy. There's not black and white answers. You have to have a lot of feel and a lot of understanding and a lot of willingness to just think about it. I love that it's bringing me into that deeper understanding of nature and my role with it. And it kind of keeps, I think, us humans from getting too arrogant. It kind of keeps us in our place and understanding how to work with another living being, and not force it to do what we want. And so I think to me, and it took me a while to understand that, but that's been the biggest benefit. And then, I don't know, on a lighter side, I just think the mental health aspects of just working with the animal, getting on the same page with the animal, it brings a lot of peace and clarity to me when my life is busy and chaotic. And so that's another reason I think on its own, I would have horses just for that in and of itself. But there's a lot of deeper stuff there too.
Yeah. And some people go to therapists.
Yep.
We use horses.
Yes, totally.
And my horses have been my therapist really for, it allows me to get away from what's happening if I'm at home and the kids are driving me crazy or whatever, when they were young. And then I was able to ride. I mean, I didn't leave my kids alone until they were older, but I was able to go for a ride. It just helped. It helps so much. It helps so much. And like you said, you have to be able to partner with this 1,000-pound or more animal. I mean, you can convince yourself that you can dominate, like you were saying, but you're really not dominating.
You're really not.
They've decided to let you do what you're doing.
Yes.
But you can do it in a way instead of in a way where they want to do it with you.
And when you get that, it takes a long time. Like I've ridden for years. I've ridden many horses and never had that on certain horses when I was younger. Like it's shocking to me that the horses don't just get rid of us faster, right? They could just buck us off, hurt us, kill us, whatever. And so many don't. They just put up with us where they shouldn't. But when you do get that, and when I've had those horses where we do have those moments of they're actually with me because they want to be with me, not because I'm forcing them to be with me. Like there's nothing like that feeling. It's worth the pursuit. But yeah, it's pretty cool when it happens.
It is. I totally agree. So we talked about, some of the benefits are, we talked about, our own development, like our own mental health, exercise. A lot of people think that that you just get on the horse and the horse is doing all the work, but that's if you want to be a sack of potatoes on a horse.
Yeah, it can be very athletic.
Yeah. You have to, especially as you get into more, if you're competing or things like that, you really have to use a lot of muscles.
Yes.
Every time I take a break, which I haven't ridden. Okay, Jill, you'll understand the feeling inside me right now. I haven't ridden in like 2 years.
Yes. Oh, I get it. I know exactly that feeling. Yeah.
It's really hurting inside.
Yeah.
And I am determined this summer to get back. I have the 2 retired horses, and then we have 2 other horses. My daughter's pony that she used for mounted games, and then another horse that's actually boarded here. They're both rideable. It's just life has just not allowed me to do. But it really it's a disconnect. Like I feel like something's disconnected right now.
Absolutely.
So your exercise, you can get connect with nature. You mentioned that as well, getting more connected with nature. And I recently, in the last couple of years, found out about their electromagnetic field of their heart. Have you done any research on that?
I haven't. I think I've heard it in passing, but I haven't gone deep on it.
Yeah. So this was, I actually got this from Redmond Equine.
Oh, cool. I love Redmond.
Yeah. So it's a heart-to-heart comparison of a human horse magnetic fields. So horses have like a 8 to 10 feet radius. Oh, I mean, not horses, people have a 8 to 10 feet radius. A horse has a 45 to 50 feet radius.
Oh, interesting.
So, and it says horses have lower frequency heart waves that benefit humans. So they have it, according to this little chart,
Yeah.
they can lower blood pressure and heart rate, increase production of pain suppressors, decrease stress levels, reduce anger, hostility, tension, and anxiety. I guess that would have to depend on your ride. if you're
Sure.
if you're
Yeah.
riding.
Sometimes I'm like definitely not not giving those benefits, but sometimes I am. Yeah.
And it says increase empowerment, trust, and patience, and improves social functioning, which that's interesting. Yeah. But yeah, those are the benefits. And the okay, so let's speak now to the total newbie. What advice would you give someone who has never ridden a horse? Or wait, that doesn't have to be it. Somebody who has never owned a horse and wants to have a horse on their homestead.
Yeah. I think the first thing, I love people who take action. I love people who just dive in before they're ready. I would say maybe with the horses, do a little more prep work than maybe with a chicken or bringing a goat home, because I just see them as a different sort of category. Yes, they're an animal. Yes, there's similarities with a goat or a milk cow or something, but they're bigger. They can be more dangerous. Like a horse can kick you with way more precision and force than most milk cows will. I mean, they can kill you. So they are something to be respectful of and to really understand what you're getting into. And it doesn't mean you have to be scared of them or you have to, take 10 years to prepare yourself. But I think a lot of times I see people not understanding what they're getting into. And so, do your homework, have an experienced horse person with you. I think a lot of the horsemanship, it's really hard to learn on videos. Like you can learn to milk a cow on a video or learn how to can on a video. It's hard to learn the horsemanship just on videos and books. You need to have that hands-on to see it in person, because there's a level of feel and understanding that you can only just experience in person. You just can't get all of that on a video or a book. And yeah, I think be willing to let this become a whole new hobby or a whole new pursuit, because it can really take you a lot of places. It can open up a lot of new worlds, but it's a whole thing. It's a bigger world to explore than just the world of a dairy goat or a chicken or whatever. Like there's a whole world behind the door, and it's fun to open that door, but be willing to take that ride.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's a lot of great things about horse people. And then there's a lot of things that are like, horse people can be wonderful and they can be really super judgmental.
Yeah. I have friends who are like, oh my gosh, they're not horsey. And they're like, those horse people. I'm like, you are right. Horse people are difficult, man. And I'm like, I identify as one, but also horse people are a whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So just find the people that you trust that are willing to explain the simplest processes, simplest things in a way that you feel like is helpful for you, because I learned this when I was taking my kids through different instructors, whether it was horses or piano teachers or whatever. I was like, I don't need to waste my time having a teacher not explain it well. I'm not going to pay someone or have my children not feel like they're empowered by the end of it. So you can make that choice for yourself as well. You don't have to choose somebody who's a jerk just because they're so cold, really good. You can find people. I mean, I've had some teenagers explain very well to my kids some of the, some horsemanship things. And so, there's just those people that are willing to take the time to explain things. And those are the types of people you want to. Yes.
There's a lot of ego in the horse world, which is unfortunate. But yeah, you don't have to pair up with those sort of teachers. There's good people who are willing to teach and be humble about it.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go through the cons, because, I mean, there are a few of owning horses. I like to do the pros and cons list. So the pros, we went over the pros, and the cons would be like, one is that they tend to be way more sensitive and are prone to more illness and injury. Would you say that's true?
Yes, my husband would also say that's true. He's always like, "Oh my gosh, you look at them wrong," and they try to cut their foot off. So yeah, they are more sensitive, I found, than our other farm animals for sure. And you have to some of them are pretty ailments or whatever are pretty serious. You have to be able to identify what's going on and act quickly.
Yeah, yeah, because especially their digestive system is like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
But I guess that's true of goats, and like if something goes wrong with their digestion, it could go pretty bad pretty fast too. So
bloat and yeah. I mean, they're all like that. Horses are a little more high strung or I don't know, delicate or whatever. But they often it's all
delicate
a
is
big
the
deal for all
word.
the animals. Delicate,
Yeah.
yes.
For the size that they are very delicate.
Yeah.
Their legs are delicate.
The legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one of the cons. Like earlier I said they can be expensive, and for you have pasture. How much of the year are they able to graze on your pasture? Is that all year round?
No, and I think some places, well, in Wyoming, because of just the shortness of
right.
our growing season, I put them on usually in May and pull them off in October.
Okay.
And then we're feeding hay, and I keep them in a pen usually in the winter with a big bale of hay just to keep them off the pasture and give the pasture a rest. But yeah, it is expensive. We do some of our own hay. We bale it ourselves or do custom haying, so that helps. But yeah, that's an absolute expense that you have to keep in mind. And you can keep a horse in a stall or a pen all the time and feed them hay year round. It just gets more pricey. And I do think it's good to have them out on pasture if you can, just because they're meant to be out, moving around. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We don't have a big turnout, but we have a turnout for ours.
Yeah.
And then 2 of the horses come in at night, and because part of it's just electric fence.
Yes.
That's the other thing. You can get away with some things with horses if they're like the electric fence. You can do that, and it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, depending on the horse.
Yes, we have a little bit of electric. Just to kind of divide some things up, and it works well. They'll see that it's a one little white strand, and they're like, oh, like no, absolutely, they won't go near it. So it works good. Yeah.
I have one, the older one that I was saying, that the 33-year-old, she, for the longest time, she didn't even know the thing was not hot. And then so she would just respect the line.
Yes.
And then once she figured out it wasn't hot, she would figure it out and get out. But it's you can train them. They're easy to train that in that way, I think.
Yep.
But their dietary needs. So a lot of times, especially when they get older, they need extra supplements and extra feed. Like my 33-year-old she eats a lot of senior feed right now because she has trouble keeping her weight on. Is that the way do you supplement as well?
I haven't done a lot of green. I think if I was using them harder, we might supplement with that. So right now they're mostly grass. If I feel like they need a little extra, I'll get alfalfa mixed with the grass. But yeah, when I've had older ones or had ones that were struggling with the weight, which sometimes there's certain ones that just struggle keeping the weight on. We've bought lots of bags of the equine senior, which is definitely pricey, but yeah, sometimes it's needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And their weight can change so fast.
Very fast.
That's why you kind of have to really be, on top of your animals, because right now, even she was doing fine during the winter, and then suddenly she lost during the summer. I think the summer and the flies, like her
flies.
Putting out extra energy to keep the flies off and stuff.
Yes.
She started losing weight again. I was like, dang it, we just got you up again.
Yeah.
So we're working on that. We're working on getting her weight up, but that is a con. You have to you may have to supplement, especially if you have an older horses. And a lot of times people who are new will get older horses because they're a little bit safer generally. Yeah. And then earlier I mentioned you need to be aware, if you have an older horse, their lives don't end usually very well. So you have to have plans to do what you need to do at the whether that is, a lot of times it's really hard to make the decision that if they get to a certain age, sometimes it's just better to put them down rather than try to give them away, even if they're not at the point where they actually need to be put down. We actually had to do that with one of ours. He was like 33 or 34, and every winter it was just getting harder and harder. And I was like, we need to just put him down to where it's not an emergency. That was our biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been there, and it's a hard call, but Yeah, when they're just not
Mhm.
getting the weight. And, sometimes I'll do it right before winter when it's, they're going in. You don't want them to suffer through the cold and they're already
Yeah,
skinny. And so, yeah, but it's a hard
yeah.
call.
It is a very hard call. So
Yeah.
so so emotionally, that's a con too. You have to deal with a lot of emotional stuff. I think we probably is a good place to end as far as the horse topic. There's so much. Mention that book, the author again, is if somebody wants to maybe read on what you were talking about. You mentioned an author.
Yeah, Wendell Berry. He has horses and he talks fondly of horses. I don't think he really has horse books necessarily, but if
Mm,
you really want to if you really want to just read about that relationship with nature and
mm,
that partnership versus the exploitive, that modern mindset's really about how we exploit nature and the land and the animals to our usage. And he's
mm,
more coming along with that regenerative approach. He has a ton of books. A really good one to start with is called The Unsettling of America.
mm.
Um, that's a good place to start with his philosophies.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean there's so many books you can go and read on the topic of horses. Do you have any favorites that you
Yeah,
maybe?
I think anyone in the world of Tom Dorrance and his students, I
Mhm.
always am listening. Are you familiar with his teachings?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
he wasn't a writer per se. I think he was really someone you needed to be around, but he passed a number of years ago. And so sometimes just
Mhm.
reading his books, you have to kind of read between the lines because he speaks not in riddles, but he has bigger concepts that you kind of have to chew on. So him or any of the people that learned from him, I always pay attention when they're talking or
Mhm.
writing something. Yeah.
Yeah. Work Schiller is that how you say his
Oh,
name?
yes. Yep.
Work Schiller. I met him on Clubhouse once, and he's
Oh,
really a
cool.
neat guy. He's very, very
Yeah.
nice. And what I liked about him is that he is a teachable person,
Yes.
that he doesn't have it all figured out. I mean, I think he changed his whole philosophy at some point with the way he
Mm,
was training because he realized one of his horses was not responding the way all the other horses did. And so he had to really, you know, and I love that when someone who's
I like
really
that. Yeah.
very educated and knows their topic and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, I don't know anything."
Yeah. I
I need
respect
to
that so
yeah,
much.
I do
Yeah.
too. I feel the same way. Yeah. Okay, speaking of books, I know you have a book coming out in October. What's it about?
Yeah, so it's called Old Fashioned on Purpose, the same name as my podcast, and it's a homesteading
Okay.
book, but it's not a homesteading book. It's like a bigger picture book. So it's not a tutorial or a how to, but it's more the philosophy of living this lifestyle with more intention and really asking and answering the question, what did we leave behind as we've raced towards progress at all costs over the last 100 years, and how can we take some of those pieces that we've left and bring them back into our modern world? And so yeah, it's just kind of looking at that and talking about my story and my journey. And there's some horse stories in there too, here and
Oh,
there.
good.
So
I was going to
yeah.
ask you that. I was
Yep.
like,
Yep.
are there horse stories?
There are
Yeah.
horse stories. Yes.
I have this. So I did this something fun at the end of my last podcast episode, or interview with this keto guy, and I asked him some questions. So I wanted to come up with something fun that I do at the end. But if it doesn't work
Yeah.
out, I'll just take it out.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
I'll try to be fun. I don't know. We'll see
Okay.
what it does.
Well,
Okay.
it's okay. So what it was I actually asked Chat GPT. Have you ever heard Chat GPT?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I've heard it's an auto AI tool that you can get basically, and I've been using it for just random things. And I asked Chat GPT, list 10 things horse crazy girls do,
Ah, yes.
and it
Yes.
came up with a list. And I wanted to go through it and see what you think if this is
Yes.
something that you do. Okay,
Okay. I'm curious. Yes. Let's
yeah.
do this.
Okay, so the thing that it says before is like crazy horse girls are known for their passion and for horses, for their love of horses. While the term crazy, quote unquote, can be subjective, here are 10 things that horse enthusiasts enjoy doing. Okay, so number one is spending hours at the barn. Crazy horse girls often are found at the barn, dedicating their time to caring for and riding their beloved horses.
Yes. True.
Yeah, true.
Yep.
Yes, true. And a barn, when you were describing the looking for your home, um, and you said, you know, you looked at the house and then you went to the barn.
Yep.
That is exactly what I was trying to do with this property here. We're on, 5.5 acres, but I mean, while we were looking for properties, I was like, I don't really care what the house looks like as long as it's not like condemnable, like,
Yes.
but if it has a barn, that would be a real big plus.
Totally. Yes,
But
totally.
it ended up that we didn't get our barn. We got a nice house. So I guess I should be
Well,
happy
there you go.
about
You can always build a barn there. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, they talk about horses all the time. Is that true
that's
for
true.
you? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And if you find the person that'll talk to you with you about horses all the time,
Yes.
then it's even better, right?
Even better. Yep.
Okay. They collect horse-themed merchandise.
Yeah, as a kid, I was really bad on that. Like anything that was horse shaped, like it was all I ever got for birthdays. Like it was bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't do it so much now, although
Not so much now. Yeah.
I'll do things like that,
Yeah.
I have a painting of a horse behind me for those that can't see. But
Yeah.
okay, they attend horse shows and events. This is true.
Yes.
I'll actually attend events if I'm not participating at all, just to hang out with the person that is participating,
Yep.
just because to be around horses.
Yes. Totally.
I've been known for that over the years.
Yep.
They read horse-related books and magazines.
Yes.
Yeah. They dress their horses in stylish gear. Okay, I don't think I did a whole lot of this, but have you?
Yeah. I mean, not maybe like stylish, like they're thinking. Like I like nice tack. I am a tack snob, so
Yeah.
my tack is really important to me, and I like to have good quality tack and certain styles. But it's not like pink and purple and like sparkles. It's like I don't know what their definition of stylish is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's with colorful and fashionable gear, including blankets, saddle pads, and I didn't do a whole lot of that. I probably would have if there was the stuff that they have now back when I was right.
English
You know
is
what
a
I
little
mean?
more, you guys
That's
are a
true.
little more traditional too, with like you don't do a lot of bright colors, which I respect. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually have gotten a little bit more colorful in the last years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Explore new riding trails. Is that
Yeah. I'm more like, I guess we don't have a lot of trails here. It's more pastures because there's no trees. So there's it's just, but I like riding in new pastures. I guess that counts. Yeah.
Yeah, that counts. Okay, and then so there's just two more. Create horse-related art, which I did paint that, by the way.
You painted it. Awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, I don't do it as much now, but I used to draw them obsessively for hours.
Me too.
Yeah.
When I was really young, I would draw horses. That was all I drew. And my dad was an artist, and he showed me like how to do some techniques. And so definitely that I didn't realize that was a common thing for horse people. I just thought I just like to draw.
Yeah. No, I think I think the drawing's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then share their horse experiences on social media. That's the last one.
Yeah, I think so. It's always fun. When I got back from horse show, it was always fun to post pictures.
Yeah. So those were the 10 that they came up with. So
I think it did pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it did it. Yeah. Good job, ChatGPT. So
okay, well that's the end of that. But I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I really had a really fun time talking about this, and I'll probably listen to this again when I need motivation to like remember all the reasons why I have my horses. Although just being out with them, I can it brings it back.
For sure.
Bring out them, working with them and that sort of thing. So
no, it was good to talk about this. I know, for something different for a change, and it was fun.
Yeah, I'm glad. One last thing, your heart horse that you had, or the horse that you loved when you were 14, what was its name?
His name was Jake. Yeah. And he was he wasn't the greatest to ride, but he was just special because he was the first. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thanks, Mona. This was a blast.